His other one is this one. That was his turn. He was technically copying that one. Oh yeah, I love that they like both. They're like very similar. I love that I yeah. And then this one, he was like, it's much more dated, like, they're like, do a line here, yeah,
We're going to get started in about a minute and a half.
Good evening.
I see that it's been changed, but like how so you don't know. I know. That's why I started reading about it, and I think it very interesting. But I just wanted to know. If you don't know, there must be something that's been translated. But
Rafting, they can destroy,
oh yeah, they're the opposite. I mean, art needs so much math and so much like science to make it work. So, yeah, and I love all the like,
You don't need it.
exactly equations, that was stuff like that that you can see. Yeah, also art. Yes. Yeah.
They probably think kind of same way.
Yeah.
okay. No more chitter chat. Now, we actually are going to break into groups, women and men. But I want to give you some preliminary, preliminary discussion before we do that. So we'll jump right in. Tonight we're talking about Eros and physical intimacy, basically sex, in marriage. So this is a great quote from St. John Chrysostom. You may have heard it before. Anybody have good enough eyesight to be able to read it? You know what? I'll read it since I'm facing the live stream, and I think they can't see it actually. It's too bright. So I'll read it out loud so that it gets picked up. How do they become one flesh? This is from his homily on Colossians. It's great. Like, it has almost nothing to do with marriage or anything. I think he says something like, it's just a meditation on like one line. It's wonderful. How do they become one flesh? As if she were gold, receiving the purest of gold. The woman receives the man's seed with rich pleasure, and within her it is nourished, cherished, and refined. It is mingled with her own substance, and she then returns it as a child. The child is a bridge connecting mother to father, so the three become one flesh, as when two cities divided by a river are joined by a bridge. And here that great bridge is formed from the substance of each, just as the head and the rest of the body are one, since the neck connects but does not divide them, so it is with the child. That is why the scripture does not say, they shall be one flesh, but that they shall be joined together into one flesh, namely the child. But Suppose there is no child. Do they then remain two and not one? No! Their intercourse affects the joining of their bodies, and they are made one, just as when perfume is mixed with ointment. I know that my words embarrass many of you. And then he chides them. It's because your mind's in the gutter. I'm talking about beautiful things. And your mind is dirty. Great. So, is Eros a blameless passion? And by blameless passion, this is kind of a category in St. John of Damascus and in many of the church fathers. St. John of Damascus talks about hunger as a blameless passion, being tired and needing to sleep, a blameless passion. Even he talks about the fear of death as a blameless passion, because we are not meant to die. And so being, jumping out of situations in which you would die is actually a blameless passion. He's speaking in terms of Christ. Christ didn't have any children, despite what modern, novels might want to try and suggest. So he doesn't really address Eros. So what do you all think? Is it a blameless passion? Does it fall into the category of things like hunger and, fear of death? Lee.
At the risk of sounding quite stupid, I actually have never heard the word Eros before.
Oh,
so
sorry,
can you give
very
a
sorry.
definition of it?
Yes. So, yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You probably heard the word erotic, though.
Yes, okay.
So the word erotic comes from the word eros. The word eros is a form of love. If you've ever, C.S. Lewis's Four Loves is a really good meditation on 4 different types of love. Storge, kind of the family love, or love that you would have for children or grandchildren or godchildren. Philia, which is brotherly love, Philadelphia, and eros, and then also agape. But eros is sexual love. So sexual. I do want to make a distinction, because there is lust that is just, goats get lusty. Like, got to spread my seed. But eros is a little fuller than that, which I want us to talk about. But is sexual desire a blameless passion? Dan says yes.
Yep.
All right.
I would
Yes,
say
Javier.
that on one level, the initial sexual attraction is a blameless passion, but that the way we react to it can increase it or distort it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just have to note, Javier, Roman Catholic, they've done actually quite a bit of work since the, I think, 1950 or whenever it was that the Pope said no contraception. And then Pope John Paul II, especially with the theology of the body. And then there's a guy, Christopher West, who has a podcast and a series of books, who kind of has taken that and tried to make it accessible to the everyday man. So there's a lot that's been thought about this very question in the Catholic tradition. As Orthodox, it's not been quite as explicit. So you're saying that early on it can be blameless, but that there are so many opportunities for it to go bad or to go crooked. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that we don't experience attraction independent of how we react to it. So a lot of what we experience is also because of how we react to it. In other words, our behavior can affect our attractions. They can distort them, or they can reduce them, or increase them.
Yep. Yeah, and actually St. John Chrysostom talks about adultery as excessive eros. Now, people have made arguments against that, but It can be excessive, and where you're not satisfied with your wife, you go find another person too, or maybe you just reduce sex to just your own pleasure, and it's not about union with your spouse.
Well, that's essentially what I was going to suggest is, I mean, just like something like hunger can be taken to its extreme where it just becomes all about the sensual pleasure and very self-seeking. Exactly, and then it becomes a sin. Likewise, in and of itself, it is not a sin. However, taken to its extreme of self-seeking pleasure, then becomes a sin. So, yes, I would put it in the same category.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Our desire for food can turn into gluttony. Our desire for sleep can turn into like sloth. And similarly, our desire for our spouse or our sexual desire can turn into lust, which would be the sinful form of it.
I would say that if it starts with a love relationship, if a man loves his wife or loves a woman to the point that I don't think it's blameless, because it's the natural end result of someone falling in love with someone, right? And eventually they get married, eventually this Eros becomes part of their routine.
So you're saying there's nothing wrong with it, right? Right. Yes.
If it's on the right platform.
So not to get into semantics, but, and this might be circular argument, but Eros initially, I thought, the original definition was separated from lust, but now it seems like a lot of the people that have talked here have sort of interlaid those two concepts, so maybe a better delineation between the two might be helpful.
Yeah, so do you have any thoughts to kind of start us off down that path?
Yeah, I mean, Eros originally is a Greek thing, probably outside of Christianity from its origin, at least etymology-wise, but, I think in the sense here, it's more connectedness. I thought, at least that's my initial take when we started this, but it sounds like, I mean, even that can get sort of sullied over time through circumstance, but I think it's more like a pure, I think of it in at least the sense that we're talking in a Christian sense, but not to say that can't be sort of evolved negatively.
Yes, so actually, there are some Christian writers, who speak about our relationship with God in terms of Eros and erotic. Now, of course, they don't mean it in the, physical lust sense, and that's not even a part of it at all. But there is something that they're trying to express in terms of going outside of yourself, communing with someone that is wrapped up in physical intimacy. But when you kind of reduce it to certain aspects, that's when you get into when it becomes lust. So it's not like it's lust that's been purified even. It's that lust is actually a degradation of the desire for communion with another person.
The way I see it, Eros is a selfless love, a selfless sexual attraction, whereas lust is self-seeking. So, self-centered, self-serving attraction versus something that gets you outside of yourself.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right, and that's interesting. Where if you just compare humans to animals, I think animals gain benefit or gain pleasure from sex, but it almost just seems to be like mechanical. Like, this is just what we do. My body's in heat, and this is kind of what happens this time of year. And then a baby happens somehow afterwards.
Cue baby sounds.
Yes.
I was trying to think as you're talking what exactly, what is meant by Eros. I have a book that was given as a Mount Athos a couple of years ago, and it was called The Eros of Repentance, the Archimandrite George Capsan.
That's exactly what I was referring to when I said that.
And so I'm trying to understand, like, I think that what, in English, the word erotic is what's happening in our thinking. If somebody says, is erotic novel blameless, we wouldn't be able to say no, or we would say, well, if you read it, I mean, it would be difficult.
Yes.
So, the idea is that a purified eros is in the right direction. So is that kind of
Yes.
the idea here, that I mean, the word passion itself kind of implies like a problem or a misdirection of something. So,
Yes. Well, no, I mean, we are kind of in a funny situation here because, actually, I'm going to just go back for a minute. There are many church fathers who say sex as it exists now is a result of the fall, and that maybe there would have been some way for humanity to multiply, but it wouldn't have been so what it is. And that it was only after mankind received their garments of skin, that it became sexual intimacy became what it is, and procreation became bound up in all of this kind of material. There does seem to be a little bit of a bias against matter and this kind of thing that is a little bit uncomfortable to me, but maybe I just have not been fully brought into the phronema of the Orthodox Church in that respect. But there it does seem to be a tension just over the centuries with regard to what you're asking.
Well, to the extent that we only know the world after the fall, no. The answer is no. And no, it's not a problem. Like, it's
Right.
Rightly directed is right.
Yes.
We don't know what it is. So
Yeah. So probably in the kingdom of heaven there will be no thirst, there'll be no hunger, and there'll be no sex like that, like we have it today. There is something about it that is provisional.
But wouldn't the analogy be, or not the analogy, wouldn't it be there would be no thirst, there would be no hunger, there would be no Eros? I mean, we know there's going to be feasting, or like the analogy given about heaven is feasting, and communion involves drinking. I guess I don't know. Like, there's a lot we don't know about.
Well,
the
you're
kingdom of
right.
heaven.
You're right, and Saint Gregory of Nyssa talks about.
He was scared of the movies.
Probably didn't.
Might be even scarier in here, I don't know. Yeah, so St. Gregory talks about eternal progress, like we're constantly desiring God and entering into Him more and more fully and being more and more fully filled with Him. But so then there is kind of a experience of lack or something like this, that thirst and hunger and even sexual desire could be related to. So, no, it is difficult to speak about the kingdom of heaven. Of desires, St. John Chrysostom, this is a homily on the Gospel of John. Desires, some are necessary, some natural, some neither, one or the other. For example, those which, if not gratified, destroy the creature, are both natural and necessary, as the desire of meat and drink and sleep. Carnal desire, he's talking about sexual desire, is natural indeed. So he's saying that there's something just related, it's natural to our bodies. It's not bad. It is natural, but it's not necessary. For many have got the better of it and have not died. Maybe they thought they were going to die. But the desire of wealth is, this is in the context of talking about gaining wealth. The desire of wealth is neither natural nor necessary, but superfluous. And if we choose, we need not admit its beginning. So So he's saying, sexual desire actually is natural in a way that is blameless, although it is not necessary. So that's maybe a helpful distinction. Yes.
So sorry, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit, it's not necessary for a monk, right? But for a young married couple, I would argue that it's both natural and necessary. So a lot of what we're receiving when we receive the tradition, right? A lot of these are written by celibate church fathers.
Yeah. And
I'm not trying to discount their wisdom, but on maybe a married priest or a married theologian would say something slightly different about some of these things.
Yes.
Or just place different emphasis anyway.
Well, it is interesting that it's rather individualistic, because it's not thinking about the social body. To the social body, actually, it is necessary that people have children if it's going to continue. I mean, you could have a lot of people still not having children, but you need some if the social body, if everybody, so there is some necessity to the social body that exists over time, that is humanity. There is some necessity to its existence that he fails to see. And yes, if you're married, it absolutely is necessary, and that's what we're going to talk about later. But,
And I also don't think Christianity would have got very far if it advocated for celibacy for all of its members.
Exactly. It's kind of self-selecting.
Yeah,
Just dies
would
out.
have been allowed.
Not a good advertising point.
No.
That's right.
It was
Shakers.
attempts and it failed.
Yes, shakers.
Does he mean not necessary for everybody?
Well, it's interesting because in some of his texts he's talking to virgins, he's talking to married people. This is a text where he's just commenting on the gospel, and he's actually talking about wealth and the pursuit of wealth. So it's kind of a throwaway comment, actually, about sexual desire. Maybe if you plied him a little bit more about this, he would say, maybe he would agree with you.
I think the way I take it is more on an individual basis, and at an individual moment, it's never absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
If we believe that it's necessary, then if that element of our relationship is removed, not by the will of either party, let's say through illness, then we'll be justified in walking away from the relationship because now we don't have what's necessary. So I think it's dangerous to look at it that way.
That it's not necessary to the marriage.
That it is necessary. To assume that it is necessary to a marriage can justify a lot of things.
I see. Yes.
Because there are times in our lives where we might not be able to, do it.
That's right.
Maybe your spouse is ill. Maybe you're separated for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Physically separated. Your one's deployed for 6 months, and so I think we have to be careful.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Thank you for that corrective. So often, the reason why, you always have to make sure you're hitting both ends of the spectrum. Because I'm often talking to people who are like, they have marriages where sex is not happening, but it's not because of any of those situations. It's like, really, it should be happening. But it is not a necessary condition for a marriage to continue. Even, even our monks, even married saints who then go off to monasteries, they are still considered married. And we've got the story of Peter and Febronia in Muron, I believe it is, in Russia, where their bodies kept coming back together even after they had died. And so finally, I don't know exactly how this worked out, but I don't know if their coffins just ended up next to one another or what it was, but so they decided that they would not bury them in these separate monasteries, but they would bury them together in one place. And so the marital bond persisted even after death. In that case, you could see it persisting after death. So even though for a long period they had been celibate monastic.
I am a little confused when he says natural but not necessary carnal desire, right? Does he mean at any given time or for any individual, meaning there conceivably could be an individual that has no carnal desire ever, because it's not necessary, right?
I think he just means that it is necessary to your body that you eat. You have this desire,
Right.
you have to do it.
Yeah, but he separated carnal desire out. He said those are natural and necessary.
Right.
He says carnal desire is natural but not necessary. So the question is, are people born without carnal desires because it's not necessary?
Maybe they are. I don't think that's the point.
But the rest of the sentence, excuse me, doesn't say don't have it, it says they have got the better of it, right? So
I'm sorry?
They've worked against
They
it.
had to work.
Well, the
against
rest of the sentence says, for many have got the better of it.
Oh,
Not
okay,
that.
So your question is theoretically a good question, but
Okay.
just in this
I
case.
see.
Right, yeah, he is suggesting that you have to fight against it in order to do it.
And I think that the fact that he's saying that it's natural implies that you are born with it.
Right.
Yes, and that it's not not a sinful, like
Yeah.
in and of itself. So, some natural limits. Of course, sodomy is one of them. We often talk about sodomy as particularly males with males, but actually, in like Christian tradition, sodomy is also anal sex with a woman. So this is not something that we ought to be participating in. That it's kind of like it's a reduction of truly good erotic love, truly good eros. So even if it's heterosexual, it's not natural, understood in much of the Christian tradition, including in the East. Contraception, we have an age in which contraception is very normal. It's been normalized, and we certainly see in the Orthodox Church, I think the Patriarch of Antioch put out a statement about contraception and family life around the same time that the Patriarch of Russia put out a statement about contraception and family life. And they did not agree with one another. Antioch, I believe it was like, yep, contraception, no problem. It's necessary in some cases, and we don't have a problem with it in general. Russia said, why would we be doing this? We've never had a tradition of contraception. We ought not begin. And so you do find different views in the Orthodox Church, and in the Catholic Church it was debated intensely, and then came down to the Pope, and he gave a ruling on this that was not popular, and that a lot of people kind of wondered, wow, are you taking us back to the Dark Ages? And he definitely received a lot of criticism for it. Of course, there's different kinds of contraception. You can take the pill, hormones. That's relatively more recent, right? And far more, relatively recent. Barrier methods, right? And then those go back ages through the millennia. Rhythm methods, I'm sure, go back through yes, they do. That's even the Old Testament, actually. Onan, that's his sin, is spilling his seed on the ground, right? And then natural family planning really has kind of the practices around it would not be maybe called contraception in some circles, but it has to do with understanding kind of ovulation and menstruation and all of these things, and trying to abstain if you don't want a child, when your wife is fertile, and then you don't necessarily have to abstain outside of those periods. So there are. So I want to be mindful that there are different kind of voices on this, but I think hopefully we can talk about this in our breakout groups a bit more, and some of the reasons why you would want to not use contraception. And I think it is bound up with this question, actually, of why is shame associated with sexuality? And we're going to go a long way around. But shame, of course, in the garden, the man and the woman realized they were naked. Now, it could be like, maybe the biblical author had in mind the people, I had in mind children. There comes a point where they're like, I'm naked. But early on, they don't care. They don't notice, right? They run around like completely naked and laugh and great. There is a point at which they recognize they're naked. So why is there that shame associated with it? So we're going to go on a quick tour of the Odyssey. In the Odyssey, Odysseus is coming back from his battle in Troy, and the Iliad is kind of that whole story, and now he's sailing home. And he stops at an island, and there's a sweet goddess, very beautiful, named Calypso. He stays there, has relations with her for a long period of time, and thinks, what am I going to do? And every morning he would get up and he would look out across the sea, and he would pine for Penelope and home. So this is Calypso. If you could see it all before you go, all the adversity you face at sea, you would stay here and guard this house and be immortal, though you wanted her, Penelope, forever. That bride for whom you pine each day, can I be less desirable than she is? Less interesting, less beautiful? Can mortals compare with goddesses in grace and form? So Calypso is basically saying, stay here with me, don't you like it? And you'll be immortal. Nevertheless, here's how Odysseus responds. My quiet Penelope, how well I know, would seem a shade before your majesty. She's not very much to look at compared to you. Death and old age being unknown to you, while she must die. Yet it is true, each day I long for home. And this is beautiful because it kind of shows that this erotic love, this love that is found in your spouse, is more than just kind of sexual fulfillment or gratification. That for Odysseus, home is bound up in it. Like, I don't want to get too crass, but I'm sure he's having great sex with Calypso. But it's not satisfying because it is home that he's looking for. And then when he gets there, he finds all these guys in his home, in his palace, and they all want to marry his wife, and he just hacks them to pieces. And then his wife, she's like, well, you're as strong as my husband. I'm still not sure, though, if you really are my husband. You could just be another suitor. And she says, maid, move our bed out into the hall, and he can sleep there overnight. And at this, Odysseus is completely enraged. He's like, move our bed? That would be defiling everything we've ever had. Because when he built their house, he cut down this majestic tree, probably a sacred tree. And that tree that he cut down, the stump became the bed. So like moving the bed would also be very problematic. But it's kind of like his love of his wife, his love of his home is rooted in the ground. It's like all of his whole country and his whole land is bound up in his love for his spouse, that is all wrapped up in their marital union. And so in the Odyssey, before Christianity, we have a beautiful picture already of the fullness of love that extends so far beyond just like, sexual gratification. Whoops, I guess that was the end of it. So when we cover up, I think that we are, in shame. I think there is a sense in us that there is a great mystery in our sexuality. And what do you do with a mystery? You don't just kind of hang it out there for everyone. You are discreet. I mean, even like when we sit down at a table to eat food, you can be barbaric and just, eat to fill your belly. But we have all of these table manners that have developed. Like, we don't have, like, it's because there's something going on there more than just gratifying our belly, that we have these table manners and all these customs around eating food and sharing food together. And so these customs are kind of like the corollary of covering ourselves. You have all these customs around death as well. Like, we recognize that there's something like liminal. We're on the edge of things when we are encountering a dead body, and it's not okay to just throw a dead body out there for the birds to eat. You have to bury the dead body. There is some form of respect, and even covering dead bodies. Like, I mean, it's a dead body. You could just see it as material, but we don't. We recognize that there's a mystery here, that there's something beyond just what is appearing on the surface. And so likewise with our sexuality, there is a great mystery that opens up in our marital bonds, in our physical union. There's a great mystery that opens up. And so that's why actually shame is put aside. Like, when you're naked with your spouse, like, it's not like you're being looked at, or like you have to hide the mystery. Like, no, this is what we have been keeping the mystery uncovered for. Now now it can have received full expression, so there's not shame. Even in terms of well, that's all I'll say about that. I saw your hand, David.
Well, that's okay.
Okay. All right.
The time.
Yeah, I think we'll. So it's that mystery of encounter that I think contraception really undermines. That would be why I would say, maybe your patriarch lets you use contraception, but you probably are going to be a lot sorrier for it. So it would be a matter of, like, decency in some ways. So why don't we break off into groups, men and women? We'll talk a little bit. My wife will, maybe the men will take a sojourn next door, and we'll go downstairs. And we do need to be mindful of the time, so we only have like 25 minutes, so that next door they're not stuck with the kids.
Turn off our camera.
Yes, I'm going to turn off the camera. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to go to private time.